there. You are there. Where can I run? Where can I run? It's by my side and I'm alive. Where can we go? Where can we go? It's yours and mine inside. God sees all of us. God sees all of us. And we are all God's children. God hears all of us. God hears all of us. Even if we don't listen. God in all of us. God in all of us. To be more like children. God sees all of us. God hears all of us. God in all of us. God in all of us. God sees all of us. When we break and when we bend, it is there. You are there. And when we pray and when we're a mess, it is there. You are there. Where can I run? Where can I run? It's by my
me. You know my every move. You love for me to sing to you. I know that you are for me. I know that you are for me. I know that you will never forsake me in my weakness, and I know that you have come now, even if to write upon my heart, to remind me who you are. So patient, so gracious, so merciful and true, so wonderful in all you do. You feel me, you see me, you know my every move. You love for me to sing to you. Lord,
I'm going to read John chapter 9 from the Message. Hear the word of God. Walking down the street, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, causing him to be born blind?" Jesus said, "You're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. There is no such cause-effect here. Look instead for what God can do. We need to be energetically at work for the one who sent me here, working while the sun shines. When night falls, the workday is over. For as long as I am in the world, there is plenty of light. I am the world's light." He said this, and then spit in the dust, made a clay paste with the saliva, rubbed the paste on the blind man's eyes, and said, "Go wash at the pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. The man went and washed and saw. Soon the town was buzzing. His relatives and those who year after year had seen him as a blind man begging were saying, "Why isn't this the man we knew who sat here and begged?" Others said, "It's him all right." But others objected. "It's not the same man at all. It just looks like him." He said, "It's me, the very one." They said, "How did your eyes get opened?" "A man named Jesus made a paste and rubbed it on my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' I did what he said. When I washed, I saw." "So where is he?" "I don't know." They marched the man to the Pharisees. This day when Jesus made the paste and healed his blindness was the Sabbath. The Pharisees grilled him again on how he had come to see. He said, "He put a clay paste on my eyes, and I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "Obviously, this man can't be from God. He doesn't keep the Sabbath." Others countered, "How can a bad man do miraculous, God-revealing things like this?" There was a split in their ranks. They came back at the blind man. "You're the expert. He opened your eyes. What do you say about him?" He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews, the Pharisees, didn't believe the man was blind to begin with. So they called the parents of the man, now bright-eyed with sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, the one who you say was born blind? So how is it that he now sees?" His parents said, "We know he is our son, and we know he was born blind, but we don't know how he came to see. Haven't a clue about who opened his eyes. Why don't you ask him? He's a grown man and can speak for himself." His parents were talking like this because they were intimidated by the Jewish leaders who had already decided that anyone who took a stand that this was the Messiah would be kicked out of the meeting place. That's why his parents said, "Ask him, he's a grown man." They called the man back a second time, and the man who had been blind told them, "Give credit to God. I know nothing about the one way or the other. But I know one thing for sure. I was blind. I now see. I've told you over and over, and you haven't listened. Why do you want to hear it again? Are you so eager to become his disciples?" With that, they jumped all over him. "You might be a disciple of that man, but we're disciples of Moses. We know for sure that God spoke to Moses, but we have no idea where this man even comes from." The man replied, "This is amazing. You claim to know nothing about him, but the fact is he opened my eyes. It is well known that God isn't at the beck and call of sinners, but listens carefully to anyone who lives in reverence and does his will." That someone opened the eyes of a man born blind has never been heard of before. Never. If this man didn't come from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything. They said, the Pharisees, "You're nothing but dirt. How dare you take that tone with us?" Then they threw him out in the street. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out and went and found him. He asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man said, "Point him out to me, sir, so that I can believe in him." And Jesus said, "You're looking right at him. Don't you recognize my voice?" "Master, I believe," the man said, and worshiped him. Jesus then said, "I came into the world to bring everything into the clear light of day, making all the distinctions clear, so that those who have never seen will see, and those who have made a great pretense of seeing will be exposed as blind." Some Pharisees overheard him and said, "Does that mean you're calling us blind?" Jesus said, "If you were really blind, you would be blameless. But since you claim to see everything so well, you're accountable for every fault and failure." Please pray with me. Oh God, we give you thanks for the stories of your presence in the lives of people. We give you thanks for the way Jesus turned the world upside down, even by giving sight to a man born blind. We thank you that you give sight, for so many of us are born blind. So God, in this time and in this place, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable and pleasing to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Last week, Pastor Ryan described Lent this way. He said, Lent is all about purpose. Purpose all-consuming, that we forget everyday things that so easily distract us. And if you remember, then he talked about being so engrossed in his work in the hidden corner of Starbucks that he went out the emergency exit after they had closed for only the Lord knows how long. But he called everyone listening to consider purpose and what that purpose is for your life. Interesting, in the text today, we encounter religious leaders, Pharisees, all consumed by everyday things. Everyday things for them, at least. In many ways, this was routine for them to determine who was the sinner and who was not, who could see and who could not. And they were consumed by the everyday things. But if you remember, Pastor Ryan said that Lent is the time to be consumed so much by purpose that everyday things are no longer a distraction, that purpose is the direction to go. And countered with the Pharisees is Jesus, who is all consumed by his purpose. All consumed. Did you hear that he said, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. Jesus is very clear about his purpose. And he's not distracted by the everyday. And he's certainly not distracted by pointing out everybody's sin, but by being light. And the Pharisees are stuck on this notion of sin because the man was born blind. There are two notions in these days, that he was either born blind because of the sins of his parents, or he was born blind because of the sins that happened before he was even born within him. And they were also so concerned about the sin of Jesus, who performed this miraculous work on the Sabbath. How could he be from God if he healed and gave sight on the Sabbath? And then probably even worse for them was that this guy named Jesus claimed to be the Messiah, the Christ. And as we know, in a number of weeks, we'll relive and retell these stories that they bring him before the courts because of his claiming to be the Messiah. And the Gospel of John is so full of symbolism and some humor if you pay attention, as well as the signs. Jesus uses these opportunities to teach, to paint the picture of what Christology, what the coming of the Messiah, the coming of the Christ means for today and for all eternity. Jesus is found in the Gospel of John telling the story, bringing people into the fold that some religious leaders would not allow in. In some ways, I think that's what church in Bethesda does. You bring people in who may not be welcome other places, to tell their stories, to change their names, maybe their looks, all sorts of ways. The Messiah, the Son of Man, would come and show what his part in the world is. As long as he's on this earth, he is the light of the world, shining that light so that all can come in. But I have to admit I can relate to the Pharisees. Now maybe you can't, but I can. Because I'd like to know why X, Y, or Z happened. Just like they said, well, why are you blind? And I like to know the cause of things. And as Americans, we're really good at finding the cause of things. Well, he has this because he did this. She has this because she did that. I can kind of relate to those Pharisees wanting to get to the core of the reason. And they would continue to go on and on and on and ask those sorts of questions. How, why, where? And yet Jesus' words and presence changes everything. He helps to shape and form a new way of understanding life, a new way of understanding what it means to be part of this family of God. He illuminates because he is the light of the world. And the way becomes clear. And the purposes of life, whether they be your individual purpose or your collective purpose, become clearer and clearer as we look to Jesus. Osvaldo Vena, he's a theologian, a retired professor, states this. He says, the man who was born blind, is a foil for the blindness of the Pharisees. A foil for the blindness of the Pharisees. A blind man sees what the religious authorities do not, cannot, did not see. And so this blind man shakes things up. This blind man is able to see more spiritually than those who are the spiritual leaders in this account. And we certainly see spiritual blindness in all sorts of ways, whether it comes from consumerism or things that consume us every day. And I go back to Pastor Ryan's definition of the purpose of Lent, that you're so consumed by your purpose, you're not distracted by those everyday things. Spiritual blindness. Spiritual blindness. But the man who was born blind has a spiritual clarity, right? He's not asking how he was healed. The Pharisees are. They're also saying, who does such things on the Sabbath? Where is he now? And then, are you really that blind man who we used to see begging? They're just constantly questioning and wondering instead of allowing the good news to permeate their lives. And I really love this notion that Jesus finds ways to engage in ways that were not expected. Of course, it's not humor that makes us laugh hysterically, but it's humorous in that it makes us go, huh, Jesus wasn't always so stiff and serious. Jesus wasn't always saying, this is the way. But while he said this is the way, he added life and energy and excitement to things. And the Gospel of John talks about this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we know these passages, but in his days of writing this was not known. was thought to be heretical. But I love the call also and the bravery of the man. Imagine, he was born blind. And this Jesus came, and he spit in the dirt, and he made some clay and put on his eyes. It's a little weird, isn't it? I mean, it is to me. Most people don't spit on dirt and put it on me. And then his bravery to go and wash. What would have happened if when he washed, he didn't see? All that hope that he held, that this would be the answer for that which he has lived with, the reason that he begs. It was brave of him to hear these words. It was brave of him to take it on and believe that this man, Jesus, who spat in the dirt, put it on his eyes and said, go bathe in the pool that says sent. Many say this alludes to baptism. He once was blind, but now he sees. He was brave. And then he went to the Pharisees. He knew his story. He knew who he was. He knew he was the blind man who begged, who was given sight. And these religious leaders who were intimidating kept grilling him. And yet he was brave. He knew his story. He knew that he saw, and he could declare his story. I once was blind, but now I see. And all I know is that this man, Jesus, did all this. Listen to verse 30 again, starting in verse 30 to 33. And this is from the New Revised Standard. The man answered, here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. These were the words of a brave man who once was blind but now could see, and went before the leaders, the religious leaders, those who set who was in and who was out, those who set a direction for purpose and said, this is the way to go. In his bravery, he was gaining all sorts of new sight. Perhaps we might say insight. Not only was he physically blind once upon a time, he was spiritually blind, and now he sees. And so I wonder on this Lenten journey what we all might be looking for. Maybe we're in need of a salve. A muddy salve that when we wash, we would find healing, but not just for healing, but for being sent. When he received his sight after washing in the pool of send, he was sent. He lived into that journey that we are offered to live into. But maybe we're intrigued by the light. Not just the healing salve, but the light of Christ, the one who says, I am the light of the world, who illuminates dark places and sets us free that we might be who we were created to be by the Almighty God. Or maybe we're a little bit like the parents who aren't so sure what we should say, who aren't so sure what will happen to us, and so we just let somebody else testify. In their case, their son who was blind, who now sees. And perhaps we're just a little more cautious or a little more worn out as we journey in this pathway called life, called faith, right now called Lent. On Friday's meditation from the Metro, Pastor Ryan shared some of his favorite quotes from the Gospel of Thomas. Now, I was sharing with Michelle before the service that I was talking with someone about how the meditations from the Metro were looking at the Gospel of Thomas, and the person said, "What?" I said, "Well, this is a really open church." Because many churches do not read the Gospel of Thomas. If you didn't know, now you know. But I was really taken by the second saying, which might help all of us on this journey. It says this: Jesus said, "Let one who seeks not stop seeking until that person finds. And upon finding, the person will be disturbed. And being disturbed, will be astounded and will reign over the entirety." The person who seeks will find, will be disturbed, and will be astounded. Isn't that sort of like the man who was born blind? The man who begged, that's all he could do in his day. Jesus sought him. Jesus astounded him. And Jesus allows him to live in a whole new way, that he even confronted the Pharisees with the truth of his story. And so maybe we, the seekers of 2023, will see fully and live into the call that God has for us. Just maybe. Maybe individually, maybe collectively as the people of God. The man who was born blind, he got it, didn't he? He sees and he has been astonished. As we consider Pastor Ryan's notion of what Lent is, that we become so consumed by our purpose, by our call, that the everyday things turn out the lights in Starbucks. Maybe we'll also be astonished. Maybe we'll be like the blind man's parents, who I suspect after they've testified before the Pharisees, if they're anything like I am, when they got far out of their sight, I suspect they might have started to cry and embrace each other and say, "We're so glad that our son who's blind now sees." And we know that Jesus found the blind man, and Jesus seeks to find us so that we might be on this journey. I hope as we engage life this week that we might consider the one who declared that he is the light of the world. And as we engage with the light of the world, I wonder if these words from Mary Oliver might resonate with you, where she said in Instructions for Living, "Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it." Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. Sort of the story of the brave man who was born blind, who had a spitty salve put on his eyes, went and washed in the pool called scent, and then told about it, and tells about it today in our telling of the story, in our remembering his story, in our telling of the work of God through Jesus, the light of the world, into the man who was born blind, and into his story. Pay attention. Be astonished, and tell about it. Amen.
Good morning and welcome CIB. My name is Jeff and I'm here to bring you our Just for Kids segment. Today we are talking about an important story in the Bible about a man named Lazarus. I will read you a story about him and then share an activity with you. Jesus Raises Lazarus by Krista Bowman. A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his two sisters. Their names were Mary and Martha. They were all friends of Jesus. Mary and Martha wanted Jesus to make their brother better. They would send someone to tell Jesus that Lazarus was sick. When Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he did not go to see him right away. Jesus waited for 2 whole days. Then he said to his helpers, "Let's go to Bethany to see Lazarus." Jesus' helpers did not want to go. "The people will try to hurt you," they said to Jesus. But Jesus said to his helpers, "If we go while it is light, we will be safe." "Our friend Lazarus is just sleeping. I will wake him up," said Jesus. Jesus' helpers hoped that Lazarus was having a good night's sleep. "He must be getting better," they said. But Jesus knew that Lazarus has died. When Jesus got to Bethany, the people were sad. "Lazarus has been in his grave for 4 days," they told Jesus. Martha ran to meet Jesus. "If you had been here," she said, "my brother would have not died." Jesus said to Martha, "Your brother will be alive again. Everyone who believes in me will live forever." "Do you believe this, Martha?" "Yes," said Martha. "I know you are the Son of God." Mary was very sad. Martha went to her sister. "Jesus is here," Martha said. "He wants to see you." So Mary wanted to see Jesus. "If he had been here," she said, "my brother would not have died." Jesus was sad. When he saw Mary and Martha crying, "Where is he?" asked Jesus. "In his grave," they said. "We will show you where it is." Jesus went to the grave where they had put Lazarus. It was a cave with a big stone in front of it. "Move the stone away," said Jesus. "It will be smelly," said Martha. "He has been dead for 4 days." "You will see the God glory if you believe," said Jesus. So they moved the big stone away from the cave. Jesus looked up to heaven. He said to God, "Thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. But I am praying out loud so that people will believe that you sent me." Then Jesus said in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And Lazarus came out of the grave. Lazarus' hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen. He had a cloth around his face. "Unwrap him and let him go," said Jesus. Lazarus was alive. He wasn't sick anymore. Then many people believed that Jesus was God's son. Now for the activity. We are going to make a model of Lazarus. When Jesus called Lazarus, he would have looked like a mummy. So we are going to take a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll and some cut up pieces of paper and make our own Lazarus mummy. First, find a small tube from a toilet paper or paper towel roll. You can even draw a face on it. It looks like this. Then cut strips of paper. We are using paper towels, like this. Now tape the strips of paper into the paper roll. So you will have to tape it around and it will look like a mummy. And soon you will have a Lazarus mummy. Thanks for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed this activity.